Control Your Reactions, Emotional Discipline for an Unbreakable Mind, published by the Growth Mind Audiobook. Introduction. There is a quiet moment that determines the direction of every life. It lasts only a few seconds, and most people never notice it. It is the space between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. Inside that brief moment, futures are built, relationships are strengthened or broken, opportunities are seized or lost, and character is quietly forged. The quality of your life is not measured by the number of challenges you face, but by the quality of the responses you create. Many people spend years trying to control the world around them. They chase certainty, avoid discomfort, and hope that one day life will stop testing them. Yet life has never made that promise. Unexpected criticism will arrive, plans will fail, people will disappoint you, pressure will appear without warning. The question is not whether these moments will come. The real question is who you will become when they do. Picture a master glassmaker standing before a blazing furnace. The intense heat is not the enemy of the glass. It is the force that gives it shape. Remove the fire, and the glass remains fragile and unfinished. Guide the heat with patience and precision, and it becomes something remarkably strong. Your emotions work in much the same way. Anger, fear, disappointment, excitement, and uncertainty are powerful forces. Left unchecked, they can distort your judgment and weaken your decisions. Directed with discipline, they become the energy that sharpens wisdom, resilience, and inner strength. This audiobook offers a different way of thinking about emotional control. Instead of teaching you to suppress your feelings, it will teach you to lead them. Instead of fighting every emotion, you will learn to understand its purpose, redirect its energy, and decide whether it deserves influence over your next action. Emotional discipline is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about becoming the steady force behind your own decisions. Throughout these chapters, you will explore original ideas, practical mental models, and fresh perspectives designed to strengthen your ability to remain calm when others panic, focused when others become distracted, and thoughtful when others react without reflection. Each lesson builds naturally upon the one before it, creating a complete system for developing emotional resilience from the inside out. By the end of this journey, you will discover a truth that few people fully understand. Strength is not measured by how loudly you speak, how quickly you act, or how intensely you feel. True strength is revealed by your ability to choose your response when every emotion demands an immediate reaction. Master that single ability, and you gain something no circumstance can take away: a calm, disciplined, and unbreakable mind. Chapter 1. Uncover the triggers that control you. Most people believe they lose control in the exact moment something upsetting happens. They think the harsh comment, the unexpected setback, or the broken promise is what caused the emotional explosion. But that moment is only the spark. The real fire was prepared long before anyone struck the match. Imagine walking through a city at night carrying a backpack you have never opened. Every unpleasant experience you have ever avoided examining is placed inside it. A careless insult, an embarrassing mistake, a broken expectation, a fear of being overlooked. You keep adding weight without noticing how heavy the backpack has become. Then, one ordinary day, someone lightly bumps into you. The bump is small, but the backpack is so overloaded that you lose your balance. You blame the stranger for knocking you down, never realizing the real problem was the burden you had been carrying all along. Emotional triggers work in the same way. They are rarely created in the present moment. They are old patterns waiting for a familiar signal. A delayed reply to your message may awaken the fear of being ignored. A disagreement at work may stir an old need to prove your worth. A small criticism may feel like a personal attack because it touches a belief you have quietly carried for years. The situation changes, but the pattern repeats itself. The first step toward emotional discipline is not controlling your emotions. It is discovering what quietly controls them. Think of your mind as a house with hundreds of doors. Most remain closed, unnoticed, and forgotten. Every difficult experience leaves a key somewhere inside the house. One day, another person unknowingly finds that key and opens a door you forgot existed. Suddenly, frustration, anxiety, embarrassment, or anger rushes into the room. It feels as though the other person created those emotions, but they merely unlocked a room that already belonged to you. This realization changes everything. If another person can only open the door, but they did not build the room, then your greatest opportunity for change lies within your own mind, rather than in changing everyone around you. There is another reason triggers remain hidden. They often disguise themselves as certainty. Instead of saying, "I feel insecure," the mind declares, "They don't respect me." Instead of admitting, "I'm afraid of failing," it insists, "The situation is unfair." The brain naturally protects its self-image by pointing outward before looking inward. That instinct may feel comforting, but it prevents growth. Imagine an orchestra preparing for a performance. Every instrument waits for the conductor's signal. If the conductor loses focus, beautiful music quickly becomes noise. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions behave much the same way. They all wait for direction. When an emotional trigger takes control, it steps onto the conductor's podium and begins leading your decisions. Words become sharper, judgment becomes clouded, small problems suddenly appear enormous. Yet when awareness takes the podium instead, the same emotions remain present without controlling the performance. Awareness is not passive observation, it is active investigation. The next time you feel a powerful emotional reaction rising, resist the temptation to immediately explain someone else's behavior. Instead, ask yourself a different question. Why did this affect me so deeply? That single question shifts your attention from blame to understanding. It transforms every emotional reaction into valuable information. You may discover that what angers you most is not disrespect, but the fear of becoming invisible. You may realize that disappointment often follows expectations you never expressed. You may notice that impatience appears whenever you feel your identity is being questioned. These discoveries are uncomfortable, but they are also liberating. You cannot strengthen what you refuse to see. Think of every emotional trigger as a messenger rather than an enemy. It arrives carrying information about a part of yourself that needs attention, healing, or greater understanding. Ignore the messenger, and the same lesson returns wearing a different face. Listen carefully, and each trigger becomes an unexpected teacher. Emotional discipline does not begin with forcing yourself to stay calm. It begins with becoming curious. Curious people seek understanding before reaction. They investigate before judging. They observe before speaking. This quiet curiosity creates distance between emotion and action, and within that distance, real freedom begins to grow. From this point forward, stop measuring your progress by how rarely you feel strong emotions. Measure it by how quickly you recognize what awakened them. Every trigger you uncover removes another invisible string that once pulled your behavior without permission. Little by little, reaction loses its authority, awareness gains its strength, and you begin reclaiming the one thing that has always been yours to lead: your own mind. Chapter 2. Break the reaction loop. Imagine standing beside a river after days of heavy rain. The current moves so quickly that anything falling into the water is swept away before it has a chance to change direction. Most people live their emotional lives in exactly this way. An event happens, a feeling appears, and before they realize it, words have been spoken. Decisions have been made, and consequences have already begun. They call it instinct. In reality, it is a loop they have repeated so many times that it feels unavoidable. A reaction loop is not a single event, it is a chain. One link pulls the next until the entire sequence unfolds almost automatically. A sharp comment creates irritation. Irritation creates assumptions. Assumptions create certainty. Certainty fuels action. The action creates consequences that often reinforce the original emotion, making the next reaction even faster. Every time the loop completes itself, it quietly strengthens. Think of a potter shaping clay on a spinning wheel. At first, the clay can become almost anything, but as the wheel gathers speed, every touch has greater impact. If the potter waits too long before guiding it, the shape becomes harder to change. Your mind works the same way. The earlier you interrupt an emotional pattern, the easier it is to redirect. Wait until the emotion reaches full speed, and changing course becomes far more difficult. Many people believe emotional strength means resisting powerful feelings. That is only part of the story. Real strength comes from recognizing the earliest signs before those feelings take command. Every emotion whispers before it shouts. Frustration often begins as a slight tightening of attention. Anxiety may first appear as an urge to imagine worst-case scenarios. Anger frequently starts with a silent demand that reality should be different than it is. These signals are subtle, but they are where your greatest influence exists. Picture an old railway system with dozens of intersecting tracks. A train heading toward the wrong destination can still be redirected with a small movement of a switch if someone acts early enough. Once the train has traveled miles down the wrong track, changing direction becomes expensive and complicated. Your thoughts are like those trains. The first thought is rarely dangerous. The danger comes when one unchallenged thought invites another until an entire emotional journey is underway. One practical habit can change everything. Learn to delay your first response without delaying your awareness. This does not mean ignoring your emotions or pretending they do not exist. It means allowing them to arrive without immediately placing them in charge. You are creating a brief interval where observation replaces impulse. Imagine carrying a lantern through a dark forest. If you swing it wildly every time you hear an unfamiliar sound, the light becomes unstable, making it harder to see where you are going. But if you hold the lantern steady, the path slowly reveals itself. Emotional discipline works in the same way. A calm mind does not eliminate uncertainty. It simply provides enough clarity to move through it wisely. This pause is not empty time. It is active preparation. Ask yourself simple questions. What exactly happened? What story am I beginning to tell myself? What evidence supports that story? Is there another explanation I have not considered? These questions interrupt the momentum of emotion without denying its existence. They shift your attention from defending your reaction to understanding it. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The pause grows stronger than the impulse. Situations that once pulled immediate anger now invite curiosity. Circumstances that once triggered panic become opportunities to think clearly. You are no longer trapped inside the speed of the moment because you have learned to create space within it. Consider a skilled architect restoring an ancient building. Before replacing a single stone, they study the structure. They look for cracks beneath the surface, weak foundations, and hidden stress points. If they rush into repairs, the same problems return. Likewise, emotional discipline is not about quickly fixing how you feel. It is about understanding the structure supporting those feelings, so your response becomes stronger than your impulse. Eventually, breaking the reaction loop becomes more than a technique. It becomes part of your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who simply reacts to life and begin seeing yourself as someone who directs it. Circumstances still arrive unexpectedly. Difficult people still exist. Pressure does not disappear, but your relationship with those experiences changes completely. The goal is not to become slow. The goal is to become intentional. There is a profound difference. Slowness hesitates because of uncertainty. Intention pauses because it values wisdom more than speed. Every time you interrupt an automatic reaction, you weaken an old pattern and strengthen a new one. One thoughtful response may seem insignificant, but repeated over months and years, it reshapes your character. And character, more than circumstance, determines the direction of your life. Chapter 3. Challenge every emotional story. Every emotion arrives with a storyteller. The moment something unexpected happens, your mind begins creating a narrative before you even realize it. A friend cancels a meeting and the story becomes, they no longer value me. A colleague speaks briefly and the story changes to, they're upset with me. A project fails and suddenly the story declares, I'm simply not good enough. None of these conclusions are facts. They are interpretations assembled at remarkable speed. Yet because they appear so quickly, they often disguise themselves as reality. Imagine entering a library where every book writes its next page the instant you open it. You are not reading a finished story. You are participating in its creation. Every assumption becomes another sentence. Every unchecked belief becomes another chapter. Before long, you are reacting not to the event itself, but to the story your mind has written about it. Most emotional suffering does not begin with an experience. It begins with the explanation attached to that experience. Picture a traveler standing before an unfamiliar landscape at sunrise. In the dim light, distant shapes resemble towering walls, blocking every path forward. The traveler feels trapped and prepares to turn back. But as the sun rises, those walls reveal themselves to be harmless hills with open trails winding around them. The landscape never changed. Only the light did. Clear thinking works like sunrise. It does not erase difficulty, but it reveals what is actually there instead of what fear imagined. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing their first interpretation deserves complete trust. The human mind dislikes uncertainty. When information is incomplete, it fills the empty spaces with guesses. Those guesses often borrow material from past disappointments, old fears, or hidden insecurities. As a result, yesterday quietly begins rewriting today. Think about an artist painting on a large canvas. If the first brush stroke is crooked but never corrected, every new line must adjust to that mistake. Eventually, the entire painting bends around one inaccurate beginning. Emotional thinking behaves in much the same way. One false assumption can influence dozens of decisions without ever being questioned. This is why emotional discipline requires intellectual courage. You must become willing to challenge your own conclusions before challenging someone else's actions. A useful habit is to replace declarations with investigations. Instead of saying, "They ignored me," ask, "What evidence supports that conclusion?" Instead of believing everything is falling apart, ask, "What facts do I actually know?" Questions slow emotional certainty. They invite curiosity where judgment once ruled. Imagine a map maker drawing a chart of unknown territory. Rather than filling blank spaces with imaginary roads, the map maker leaves them empty until reliable information appears. That restraint creates accuracy. Your mind deserves the same discipline. When facts are missing, resist the temptation to complete the picture with assumptions. Another challenge is recognizing how emotions change the size of problems. Fear can transform a small obstacle into an impossible barrier. Anger can make a simple disagreement appear like betrayal. Excitement can convince you that every opportunity is perfect. Emotion acts like a magnifying glass. It enlarges whatever it touches. The object itself may remain unchanged, but your perception of it grows dramatically. Imagine wearing glasses with colored lenses your entire life. Eventually, you stop noticing the color because it feels normal. You assume the world itself carries that shade. Emotional stories function in exactly the same way. They color your perception so completely that you mistake perspective for truth. The discipline is not removing emotion altogether. It is remembering that every lens changes what you see. There is another quiet danger. Repeated stories eventually become identities. Tell yourself often enough that you are unlucky, and you begin searching for proof. Repeat that people cannot be trusted, and every interaction becomes an investigation. Believe you always fail, and success starts feeling unfamiliar. Your mind naturally collects evidence supporting the story it already believes. Fortunately, this process also works in your favor. Imagine tending a garden where every thought is a seed. Some produce thorny vines that spread quickly and block the light. Others grow into sturdy trees that provide shelter and strength. The soil does not choose what grows. It simply develops whatever is planted repeatedly. Your attention works the same way. Feed your mind stories built on careful observation, honest reflection, and balanced thinking, and those stories gradually become the foundation of your character. Emotional discipline is not the ability to silence every feeling. It is the ability to refuse every story that has not earned your trust. Feel the emotion, observe the reaction, but before you believe the narrative unfolding inside your mind, examine it with patience. The strongest minds are not those that never experience emotional storms. They are the minds that understand storms can distort the horizon. They wait for clearer skies before deciding where the road truly leads. When you learn to question the stories your emotions create, you stop becoming a prisoner of assumptions and begin becoming an author of wiser decisions. Every thoughtful question rewrites the next chapter of your life, one truth at a time. Chapter 4. Rewrite the voice inside your mind. Long before you speak to the world, you speak to yourself. That conversation never truly stops. It continues while you drive, work, wait in line, solve problems, and lie awake at night. Most of the time, you hardly notice it because it has become as familiar as your own breathing. Yet this invisible dialogue quietly shapes every emotional reaction you have. It influences what you notice, what you ignore, what you expect, and ultimately, how you respond. Imagine moving into a house where a hidden sound system has been playing the same recording for years. At first, the volume is so low that you barely hear it. But day after day, the message repeats until you no longer recognize it as background noise. You simply assume it is the truth. If the recording constantly whispers that you are behind, unprepared, or not enough, every challenge will seem larger than it really is. If it repeatedly reminds you that every problem can be understood before it is solved, your mind approaches difficulty with steadiness instead of panic. The words you repeat internally become the environment in which your emotions grow. Many people try to improve their emotional discipline by changing external circumstances. They search for better jobs, healthier relationships, or quieter environments, believing those changes alone will bring peace. While surroundings certainly matter, the loudest voice in your life is still the one inside your own mind. If that voice constantly predicts failure, magnifies criticism, or searches for danger, even the best environment will eventually feel unstable. Think of your inner dialogue as the architect of an invisible city. Every thought lays another brick. Every repeated belief builds another street. Over time, your emotional life begins traveling along the roads your thinking has already constructed. If every road leads toward fear, frustration, or self-doubt, your reactions naturally arrive there as well. But if you deliberately design new paths, your emotional habits gradually follow them. This does not mean replacing every negative thought with unrealistic optimism. Emotional discipline is not built on pretending everything is perfect. It is built on speaking to yourself with accuracy rather than exaggeration. Suppose you make a serious mistake. One inner voice says, "I always ruin everything." Another says, "I made a mistake, and now I need to understand why." Both voices describe the same event, yet each creates a completely different future. The first closes every door before learning begins. The second transforms failure into information. The event remains identical. The conversation changes everything. Imagine a watchmaker carefully repairing an intricate clock. They never strike the gears with force or rush the delicate adjustments. Instead, they make small, precise corrections until every movement works in harmony again. Your inner dialogue deserves the same patience. You do not transform your thinking through dramatic declarations. You transform it through consistent, intentional corrections made one thought at a time. An effective practice is to become an editor rather than a spectator. Whenever you notice an absolute statement such as, "I never succeed," "nobody respects me," or "everything is going wrong," pause and revise it. Remove words like always, never, and everyone. Replace sweeping conclusions with balanced observations. Precision weakens emotional distortion. The more accurately you describe reality, the more calmly you respond to it. There is another important shift. Stop asking your inner voice to predict the future. Ask it to prepare you for it instead. Prediction often breeds anxiety because it assumes outcomes before they exist. Preparation creates confidence because it focuses on what you can do regardless of what happens. One mindset waits helplessly, the other builds capability. Picture a lighthouse standing beside a restless sea. It does not argue with the waves or demand calmer weather. It simply provides reliable guidance whenever darkness arrives. Your inner voice should serve the same purpose. It should not amplify confusion when emotions rise. It should become a steady reference point that reminds you of your values, your judgment, and your ability to choose wisely. Eventually, this new dialogue becomes more than a habit. It becomes your emotional foundation. Challenges will still appear, criticism will still sting, uncertainty will still visit your life. But instead of hearing a voice that feeds fear or frustration, you will hear one that asks better questions, searches for clearer understanding, and encourages thoughtful action. The strongest minds are not built through perfect circumstances. They are built through thousands of quiet conversations that gradually teach a person to become their own source of stability. When you rewrite the voice inside your mind, you also rewrite the quality of every response that follows. And with every wiser response, you become a little more difficult for life to shake. Chapter 5. Slow down before you decide. Not every decision deserves an immediate answer. Modern life rewards speed. Messages demand instant replies. Deadlines encourage quick choices. Opinions are expected before complete understanding. Gradually, many people begin believing that the fastest decision is the strongest one. Yet when emotions are involved, speed often becomes the enemy of wisdom. The quickest response may satisfy the moment, but it rarely serves the future. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of stone. With every strike of the chisel, a piece disappears forever. There is no way to place it back exactly as it was. That is why experienced sculptors never swing carelessly. They pause, observe the shape from different angles, and only then decide where the next cut belongs. Decisions work in the same way. Every choice removes certain possibilities while creating others. Once spoken or acted upon, some consequences cannot simply be erased. Emotional pressure creates the illusion that waiting is dangerous. Anger insists you must answer immediately. Fear whispers that hesitation will make everything worse. Excitement pushes you toward promises you have not fully considered. Yet emotions are poor timekeepers. They confuse urgency with importance. Picture a sailor crossing unfamiliar waters. Thick fog suddenly surrounds the boat, hiding every landmark. The captain does not increase speed to escape the uncertainty. Instead, the boat slows down. Every movement becomes more deliberate because visibility has been reduced. Emotional intensity is much like that fog. The stronger your feelings become, the less clearly you see the entire situation. Slowing down is not weakness, it is intelligent navigation. One reason people struggle to pause is that silence feels uncomfortable. They fear that delaying a response will appear indecisive, weak, or uncertain. But there is a profound difference between confusion and thoughtful restraint. Confusion avoids responsibility. Restraint protects judgment. Imagine a master locksmith working on a complicated mechanism. They never force the key simply because the door refuses to open. They study the lock, notice the tiny movements inside, and apply exactly the right amount of pressure. One careless twist could damage the entire system. Relationships, careers, and personal decisions often require the same precision. Force creates resistance. Patience creates understanding. An effective practice is to separate the moment of emotion from the moment of commitment. You are allowed to experience frustration without immediately sending the message. You are allowed to feel disappointment without instantly abandoning the goal. You are allowed to feel excitement without making promises your future self may struggle to keep. Emotions deserve acknowledgement, but they do not automatically deserve authority. Consider a photographer waiting for the perfect light. They may stand in the same location for hours, not because nothing is happening, but because timing determines the quality of the final image. A single photograph taken too early or too late can miss the entire story. Decisions follow a similar principle. Sometimes the greatest improvement comes not from gathering more information, but from allowing your emotions enough time to settle so your judgment can become visible. There is another benefit to slowing down. It allows hidden details to emerge. Initial impressions often highlight only the loudest parts of a situation. As time passes, quieter truths begin to appear. You notice another person's perspective. You recognize assumptions you made too quickly. You discover options that seemed invisible in the heat of the moment. Time does not solve every problem, but it frequently reveals the problem more accurately. Develop a personal habit of creating deliberate pauses before major decisions. It may be a short walk, a page of handwritten reflection, a night's sleep, or a few minutes of uninterrupted silence. The specific method matters less than the intention behind it. You are teaching your mind that every important choice deserves clarity instead of impulse. Eventually, this practice reshapes your character. People begin to trust your judgment because they know your words are chosen, not merely released. You become less reactive, more dependable, and far more difficult to pressure into decisions that contradict your values. Life will always present moments that demand action, but very few require panic. The strongest decision makers are not the ones who answer first. They are the ones who recognize that a calm mind sees opportunities an emotional mind cannot. Every thoughtful pause protects your future from the mistakes of a temporary feeling, and every decision guided by patience becomes another stone in the foundation of an unbreakable mind. Chapter 6. Stay calm when everything pushes you. Pressure has a way of revealing what comfort keeps hidden. Anyone can appear calm when life moves according to plan. It is easy to speak with confidence when everything is working, relationships are peaceful, and the future seems predictable. The true measure of emotional discipline is not found in quiet moments. It appears when expectations collapse, when criticism arrives without warning, or when circumstances refuse to cooperate. That is where character leaves theory behind and becomes action. Imagine a bridge stretching across a deep canyon. On bright, windless days, every bridge appears strong. Tourists walk across without giving its structure a second thought. But when powerful winds arrive, weaknesses that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Some bridges sway, yet remain secure because they were built to move with the force instead of fighting it. Others crack because they were designed only for perfect conditions. Your emotional strength follows the same principle. It is not tested by easy days. It is revealed by difficult ones. Many people make the mistake of treating pressure as an enemy. They believe stress should be eliminated before they can perform well or think clearly. Yet pressure itself is not the real problem. The problem begins when pressure becomes the leader instead of the environment. You cannot always choose the conditions around you, but you can decide who remains in charge while those conditions unfold. Think of a skilled pilot flying through unexpected turbulence. The aircraft shakes, visibility decreases, and passengers grow anxious. The pilot does not argue with the storm or demand calm skies. Their attention moves immediately to what can still be controlled: altitude, direction, communication, and steady movement. The weather may remain unpredictable, but disciplined action prevents unnecessary chaos. Emotional discipline asks you to become the pilot of your own mind. One powerful habit is learning to distinguish between external pressure and internal panic. External pressure is simply the situation you face. Internal panic is the meaning you attach to it. Missing a deadline is external pressure. Believing your entire future is ruined is internal panic. Receiving criticism is external pressure. Deciding that your value has disappeared is internal panic. The event may be unavoidable, but the interpretation remains your responsibility. Imagine carrying a compass while hiking through a dense forest. Thick trees block your view, and every direction begins to look the same. Without the compass, confusion grows with every step. With it, uncertainty still exists, but you no longer feel lost. Your values play the role of that compass. When emotions pull you in different directions, your principles remind you who you want to be regardless of the circumstances. They keep your behavior consistent even when your feelings are constantly changing. There will also be moments when pressure comes from people rather than situations. Someone raises their voice. Another questions your abilities. Someone else tries to provoke an argument simply because they have lost control of their own emotions. In those moments, remember this: emotional pressure is often contagious, but only if you accept the invitation. Picture two musicians performing on the same stage. One suddenly loses rhythm and begins playing faster out of frustration. The other could panic and follow the mistake, turning the entire performance into confusion. Instead, they keep a steady tempo. Slowly, the first musician finds the rhythm again by following the one who remained composed. Calmness has a quiet influence. It often restores order without demanding attention. Remaining calm does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean accepting disrespect or avoiding difficult conversations. Calmness simply allows your actions to be guided by intention instead of emotional momentum. A composed response can be firm, direct, and decisive without becoming destructive. As you continue strengthening this skill, you will notice something remarkable. Situations that once overwhelmed you begin losing their power, not because life has become easier, but because you have become steadier. Pressure still knocks at your door, but it no longer walks into your mind uninvited. An unbreakable mind is not built by escaping difficult moments. It is built by meeting them with consistency. Every challenge gives you two opportunities. One is to prove your emotions are stronger than your judgment. The other is to prove your judgment is stronger than your emotions. Every time you choose the second path, you reinforce a truth that becomes impossible to ignore. The world may push against you, but it does not have to push you off course. Chapter 7. Release what you cannot control. One of the heaviest burdens a person can carry is the belief that everything must go according to plan. It begins quietly. You expect people to understand your intentions without explanation. You expect every effort to produce the result you imagined. You expect fairness from every situation and consistency from every person. When reality refuses to cooperate, frustration takes over. The harder you try to force life into your preferred shape, the more exhausted you become. The truth is simple but difficult to accept. Not everything is yours to manage. Imagine a gardener tending a beautiful courtyard filled with dozens of plants. Every morning, the gardener waters the soil, removes weeds, and protects the young stems. But no matter how dedicated the work becomes, the gardener cannot command the clouds to bring rain, cannot instruct the sun to shine longer, and cannot order the seasons to arrive early. The responsibility is to care for the garden, not to govern the sky. Many emotional struggles begin the moment we confuse those two responsibilities. There is a difference between influence and control. Influence invites possibility. Control demands certainty. You can influence a conversation by speaking honestly, but you cannot control how another person receives your words. You can prepare carefully for an important opportunity, but you cannot control every unexpected circumstance that follows. You can offer kindness, effort, and integrity, yet you cannot force appreciation, agreement, or loyalty. When you mistake influence for control, disappointment becomes inevitable. Picture a musician performing before an audience. The performer can practice for years, tune every instrument, and deliver each note with precision, but the applause belongs to the listeners. If the musician performs only to control the audience's reaction, every performance becomes an emotional gamble. If the musician performs to honor the craft itself, satisfaction no longer depends entirely on external approval. Your emotional peace works the same way. It becomes stable the moment you anchor it to your actions instead of other people's responses. One reason people resist letting go is the fear that acceptance means surrender. They imagine that releasing control is the same as giving up. In reality, the opposite is true. Acceptance is not a retreat from responsibility. It is the ability to recognize where responsibility begins and where it ends. Imagine holding a kite in a strong wind. Pull too tightly, and the string snaps. Let go completely, and the kite disappears into the sky. The skill lies in maintaining the right amount of tension. You guide without forcing. You adjust without resisting every movement. Emotional discipline requires the same balance. Hold firmly to your values, but lightly to outcomes. Another hidden trap is trying to manage other people's emotions. Many spend years attempting to keep everyone happy, avoid every disagreement, or rescue others from every disappointment. Although the intention may be kind, the result is often emotional exhaustion. Every person carries a private world of experiences, expectations, and decisions. You may support them, encourage them, or stand beside them, but you cannot live their emotional life on their behalf. Think of yourself as the captain of a single ship sailing across a vast ocean. You may sail alongside countless other vessels, communicate with them, and even assist them during difficult waters. But you cannot steer every ship at once. The moment you abandon your own wheel to control someone else's direction, both journeys become unstable. Freedom begins when you stop measuring your success by everything outside your reach. Instead, ask yourself different questions. Did I act with honesty? Did I respond with patience? Did I stay true to my principles even when circumstances became difficult? These are questions entirely within your authority. They return your attention to the one place where meaningful change is always possible. Over time, releasing unnecessary control creates an unexpected sense of strength. You become less disturbed by delays because you know preparation still belongs to you. You become less shaken by criticism because your character is no longer dependent on approval. You become less anxious about uncertainty because you trust your ability to respond, even if you cannot predict what comes next. Life will never ask you to control every outcome. It asks something far more important. It asks you to govern your own choices while allowing reality to unfold in its own time. The more tightly you cling to what was never yours to command, the more peace slips through your hands. But the moment you release that impossible burden, your energy returns to where it has always mattered most, building a mind that remains steady, purposeful, and free, regardless of what the world decides to do next. Chapter 8. Turn emotional energy into personal power. Every emotion arrives carrying energy. The question is never whether that energy exists. The real question is where it will go. Left without direction, it can become destructive, pushing you toward words you cannot take back, decisions you later regret, or habits that quietly weaken your future. Guided with purpose, the very same energy can become determination, creativity, courage, and meaningful action. The emotion does not decide the outcome, your direction does. Imagine standing beside a powerful waterfall. The rushing water crashes against the rocks with tremendous force. If left alone, it simply continues its endless fall. But if someone carefully channels that same water through a series of well-designed turbines, it begins producing electricity that powers entire communities. The force never changed. Only its direction did. Human emotions work in much the same way. Anger is often misunderstood because people focus on its loudest expression instead of its hidden message. At its core, anger usually signals that something important feels threatened. It may be your values, your expectations, your sense of fairness, or your personal boundaries. The emotion itself is not your enemy. The danger begins when anger becomes the decision maker instead of the messenger. Imagine receiving a letter marked urgent. The envelope demands your attention, but it does not tell you what to do. You still have to open it, read it carefully, and decide how to respond. Emotions deserve the same treatment. They are messages requesting your attention, not commands demanding immediate obedience. Many people either suppress strong emotions or surrender completely to them. Both extremes create problems. Suppression locks emotional energy away until it eventually finds another way to escape. Surrender allows temporary feelings to govern permanent choices. Emotional discipline offers a third path. It teaches you to transform emotional intensity into useful momentum. Picture a blacksmith working in a workshop late at night. A glowing piece of metal rests inside the fire, radiating intense heat. The blacksmith does not fear the heat, nor does he carelessly grab the metal with bare hands. Instead, he uses the right tools to shape it into something valuable. Without heat, the metal remains rigid. Without discipline, the heat becomes dangerous. Strength is created through skillful guidance, not by eliminating the fire. The same principle applies to disappointment. Many people experience failure and immediately spend their emotional energy searching for someone or something to blame. Others become trapped, replaying the same painful moment over and over again. But disappointment contains an overlooked opportunity. It reveals the distance between your expectations and reality. That gap is where learning begins. Ask yourself a different question after every setback. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" That single shift transforms emotional energy from resistance into curiosity. Curiosity opens doors that frustration keeps locked. Another powerful emotion is fear. Fear often receives a bad reputation because it feels uncomfortable. Yet fear is not always trying to stop you. Sometimes it is simply asking whether you are prepared. Imagine a mountaineer checking ropes before climbing a steep cliff. The careful inspection is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of respect for the challenge ahead. Healthy fear encourages preparation. Uncontrolled fear prevents progress. The difference lies in whether fear becomes your advisor or your ruler. Think of your emotional life as a workshop filled with different tools. A hammer is useful for building but harmful when used carelessly. A sharp blade can create something beautiful or cause unnecessary damage depending on the hands holding it. No skilled craftsperson blames the tools. They improve their ability to use them wisely. Your emotions deserve the same perspective. Anger, excitement, disappointment, and fear are powerful instruments. They become constructive only when guided by thoughtful intention. As you practice this approach, you will notice that emotional intensity gradually stops feeling like a threat. Instead, it becomes valuable information and potential energy waiting for direction. Difficult conversations become opportunities to strengthen patience. Failure becomes fuel for improvement. Criticism becomes material for reflection rather than resentment. The goal is not to feel less. The goal is to use more of what you feel with greater wisdom. Every emotion contains strength before it contains danger. The deciding factor is whether you release it without direction or reshape it with discipline. An unbreakable mind is not one that extinguishes emotional fire. It is one that learns to build with it. When you stop fighting your emotions and start directing their energy toward purposeful action, every challenge becomes raw material for growth. And over time, the emotions that once controlled your life become the very force that moves it forward. Chapter 9. Break free from other people's influence. There is an invisible transaction that takes place every day. It happens without signatures, contracts, or spoken agreements. Every time you allow another person's opinion to determine your mood, your confidence, or your sense of worth, you quietly hand them a piece of authority that was never theirs to own. Most people do not notice this exchange because it feels normal. A compliment lifts their spirit for the entire day. A careless remark destroys it within seconds. Praise becomes proof of value, while criticism becomes proof of failure. Gradually, emotional stability begins to depend on circumstances that exist outside their control. Imagine living in a house where every neighbor possesses a switch connected to your lights. Whenever someone feels pleased with you, the lights shine brightly. Whenever they become disappointed, distracted, or upset, your home falls into darkness. No one would willingly design a house this way, yet many people unknowingly build their emotional lives on the same fragile system. True emotional discipline begins the moment you reclaim that switch. This does not mean ignoring advice or pretending that feedback has no value. Wisdom often arrives through the observations of others. The challenge is learning the difference between listening to feedback and surrendering your identity to it. One expands your understanding. The other slowly erodes your independence. Picture a skilled navigator sailing across open water. Along the journey, other ships send signals about changing weather, shifting tides, or hidden rocks beneath the surface. The navigator listens carefully because useful information deserves attention. But no matter how many signals arrive, the navigator never hands over the steering wheel. Information is welcomed. Control is not surrendered. Your emotional life requires the same balance. One of the greatest traps is seeking constant approval. At first, it seems harmless. You want people to appreciate your work, understand your intentions, or recognize your effort. But over time, approval quietly changes from something pleasant into something necessary. Once that happens, every decision begins asking the same question: what will other people think? That question is powerful because it slowly replaces a much better one. Is this consistent with the person I want to become? Imagine an actor performing on a stage where the audience changes every few minutes. One group applauds loud confidence, another prefers quiet humility, a third admires humor, while the next values seriousness. If the actor constantly changes to satisfy every audience, the performance eventually loses all authenticity. The actor no longer plays a meaningful role. They simply chase applause. Many people live exactly this way. They adjust their personality, opinions, ambitions, and even their values depending on who happens to be watching. The result is exhaustion because maintaining dozens of different versions of yourself requires enormous emotional energy. Freedom begins when your principles become stronger than your desire to be universally accepted. There will always be people who misunderstand your intentions. Some will criticize decisions they never had to make. Others will judge chapters of your life without knowing the pages that came before them. Trying to control every opinion is like trying to collect every leaf carried by the wind. The harder you chase them, the farther they scatter. Imagine an ancient clock standing in the center of a busy town square. Throughout the day, crowds gather around it. Some admire its craftsmanship. Others complain that it looks old-fashioned. Children barely notice it, while travelers stop to study its design. Yet the clock continues measuring time with the same quiet precision regardless of who happens to be standing nearby. Its purpose does not change because opinions do. Your character should resemble that clock. Let your actions be guided by your values rather than by the constantly changing reactions of those around you. There is another important truth. People often evaluate you through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and expectations. One person may see confidence as arrogance because they have been intimidated before. Another may mistake kindness for weakness because they have learned to distrust generosity. Their interpretation tells you something about their perspective, not necessarily about your identity. As your emotional independence grows, criticism loses its ability to define you, and praise loses its ability to distract you. You begin appreciating encouragement without becoming dependent on it. You learn from correction without allowing it to damage your self-respect. You no longer ride an emotional roller coaster built by someone else's opinions. An unbreakable mind is not created by convincing everyone to agree with you. It is created by developing such clarity about your values that outside opinions become sources of information rather than sources of identity. When your confidence is rooted in character instead of approval, you become remarkably difficult to manipulate. The world may continue offering praise, criticism, admiration, or doubt, but none of them will determine who you are. That decision remains exactly where it belongs, with you. Chapter 10. Stay unshaken around difficult people. Sooner or later, every life intersects with difficult people. Some are quick to criticize but slow to understand. Some seem to create conflict wherever they go. Others thrive on provoking emotional reactions because it gives them a sense of control. You cannot choose every person you will meet, work with, or encounter, but you can choose the role they play in your emotional life. Many people make a costly mistake when dealing with difficult personalities. They believe the challenge is winning the argument, proving a point, or changing the other person's behavior. In reality, the first victory is much quieter. It is refusing to let someone else's emotional state become your own. Imagine carrying a clear glass of water through a crowded marketplace. People brush past you from every direction. Some apologize, others barely notice. A few move carelessly without any concern at all. Your greatest responsibility is not controlling everyone in the marketplace. It is learning how to carry the glass without spilling its contents. The water represents your peace of mind. Every unnecessary reaction is another drop lost because of someone else's behavior. Difficult people often operate like mirrors turned in the wrong direction. Instead of reflecting what is happening, they project what they are carrying inside themselves. A person overwhelmed by frustration may spread frustration wherever they go. Someone consumed by insecurity may constantly search for flaws in others. A person who has never learned emotional discipline often expects everyone else to live inside their emotional storm. Imagine entering a room where someone has accidentally knocked over a bottle of dark ink. Rather than cleaning the spill, they begin touching every object they can find, leaving black fingerprints everywhere. If you become angry and start grabbing things yourself, you only spread the stain further. The wiser response is to avoid adding to the mess. Emotional conflict works the same way. Not every emotion deserves to be returned. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is learning to separate intention from interpretation. When someone speaks harshly, your mind immediately begins guessing why. You may assume disrespect, rejection, or personal attack. Sometimes those assumptions are accurate. Often they are not. A person may be reacting to stress you cannot see, disappointment they have never expressed, or fears completely unrelated to you. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it reminds you that another person's actions are rarely the complete story. Think of a physician examining a patient. The physician notices symptoms but does not confuse them with the illness itself. A fever points towards something deeper. A cough suggests an underlying condition. Likewise, rude behavior, impatience, or hostility are often symptoms of struggles hidden beneath the surface. Recognizing this does not mean accepting mistreatment. It simply allows you to respond with greater understanding instead of immediate retaliation. Another mistake is believing every disagreement requires your participation. Imagine walking beside a lake where someone begins throwing stones into the water. The surface ripples with every impact. If you spend your time throwing more stones back, the water never becomes clear enough to see beneath it. Sometimes the strongest response is choosing not to contribute to the disturbance. This requires confidence because silence is often misunderstood. Some people believe calmness is weakness or that restraint means surrender. Yet genuine composure is neither passive nor fearful. It is the ability to decide that your emotional energy is too valuable to waste on battles that produce no meaningful outcome. There will also be moments when firmness becomes necessary. Emotional discipline is not about saying yes to everything or avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Boundaries are acts of self-respect. They communicate where cooperation ends and personal responsibility begins. The difference is that healthy boundaries are established with clarity rather than anger. They are built from conviction instead of resentment. Imagine an old oak tree standing at the edge of an open field. Every season brings different weather. Gentle breezes pass through its branches. Powerful winds bend them nearly to their limits. Yet the tree remains rooted because its strength comes from beneath the surface, not from resisting every gust. Your emotional resilience should grow in the same way. Let your values become your roots. Let your patience become your stability. Let your self-control become the quiet strength that holds you steady when others lose theirs. By now, you have learned to recognize your triggers, interrupt emotional patterns, question impulsive stories, reshape your inner dialogue, slow your decisions, remain calm under pressure, release what you cannot control, transform emotional energy, and free yourself from dependence on other people's approval. This chapter brings those lessons into one of life's greatest tests: human relationships. The world will always contain difficult people. That will never change. What can change is the influence they have over your mind. The moment you stop allowing another person's behavior to dictate your emotional state, you reclaim something far more valuable than winning an argument. You reclaim your peace. And a person who can protect that peace, even in the presence of conflict, possesses a strength that no difficult person can ever take away. Chapter 11. Train emotional discipline every day. An unbreakable mind is not built during extraordinary moments. It is built during ordinary ones. Many people believe emotional strength appears when life becomes difficult. They wait for a crisis, hoping they will suddenly discover patience, courage, or self-control when they need it most. But emotional discipline does not work that way. It is not an emergency skill. It is a daily practice. The responses you rely on during life's biggest challenges are usually the habits you rehearsed during its smallest moments. Imagine a violin resting in a case for years. It may be beautifully crafted, but beauty alone cannot produce music. Only repeated practice allows the musician's hands to move with confidence when the concert begins. Likewise, emotional discipline is not a quality you simply possess. It is a skill you strengthen through consistent repetition until calm responses become as natural as reactive ones once were. Think of each day as a workshop instead of a test. Every inconvenience becomes a chance to practice. A delayed train teaches patience. An interrupted conversation teaches presence. An unexpected change of plans teaches flexibility. Most people dismiss these moments because they appear insignificant, yet they are the exact moments where emotional resilience quietly grows. Imagine a craftsperson weaving a strong rope. No single thread is impressive on its own. It is the steady process of adding one strand after another that creates something capable of carrying great weight. Your emotional character is woven the same way. One thoughtful response may seem small, but hundreds of thoughtful responses create remarkable strength. A useful daily habit is conducting a brief personal review before the day ends. Not to criticize yourself, but to observe yourself honestly. Ask simple questions. Where did I respond with clarity today? Where did emotion make my decisions harder? What situation taught me something about myself? Reflection transforms experience into wisdom. Without reflection, the same lessons often repeat because they were never fully understood. Imagine an explorer keeping a journal during a long expedition. Each evening, the explorer records safe paths, hidden obstacles, and valuable discoveries. Weeks later, those notes become more useful than memory alone. Your daily reflections serve the same purpose. They reveal patterns that are difficult to notice while you are living through them. Another practice is protecting the first few moments of your morning. Many people begin the day by immediately absorbing other people's opinions, demands, and distractions. Their attention is pulled outward before their own mind has found direction. Instead, begin with intention. Spend a few quiet minutes asking yourself how you want to respond to today's challenges, rather than guessing how today's challenges will make you feel. Think of an architect arriving at a construction site before the workers begin. Plans are reviewed, measurements are confirmed, and priorities are established before the first brick is laid. That preparation creates order throughout the day. Your morning mindset serves a similar purpose. It gives your emotions a foundation before outside pressures begin competing for your attention. There is also value in practicing emotional discipline when nothing seems wrong. Patience should not exist only during conflict. Gratitude should not appear only after loss. Self-control should not emerge only after mistakes. The strongest habits are developed before they become necessary. Imagine a sailor inspecting ropes, sails, and navigation equipment while the sea remains calm. Waiting until the storm arrives is far too late. Daily preparation allows confident action when conditions suddenly change. Your emotional habits deserve the same foresight. As these routines become part of your life, you will notice subtle but meaningful changes. Situations that once drained your energy begin requiring less effort. Your attention stays focused longer. You recover from disappointment more quickly. You become less interested in proving yourself and more interested in improving yourself. Emotional discipline gradually stops feeling like something you are trying to do and becomes someone you naturally are. Remember that progress rarely announces itself with dramatic moments. It often appears quietly. Perhaps you remain calm during a conversation that once would have frustrated you. Perhaps you pause before responding instead of speaking impulsively. Perhaps you recognize an emotional trigger before it controls your actions. These small victories are not ordinary. They are evidence that your mind is changing from the inside out. Every day offers another opportunity to strengthen that change. Emotional discipline is not a destination reached through one perfect decision. It is a lifelong practice built through countless ordinary choices made with extraordinary intention. The more faithfully you train your mind in peaceful moments, the more confidently it will serve you in difficult ones. And over time, those daily habits become the invisible foundation beneath an unbreakable life. Chapter 12. Lead every situation with emotional strength. Leadership begins long before anyone decides to follow you. Many people imagine leadership as a position, a title, or a public role. They picture someone standing at the front of a room, giving instructions or making important decisions. But the most influential form of leadership is far less visible. It begins in private moments when no one is watching and reveals itself through the way you think, speak, and respond under pressure. Before you can guide a team, a family, or a community, you must first become someone who can guide yourself. Imagine an orchestra preparing for an important performance. Every musician is highly skilled, every instrument is perfectly tuned, yet the audience immediately notices if the conductor loses rhythm. The confusion spreads without a single word being spoken. In much the same way, your emotional state quietly influences every interaction around you. Calmness encourages clarity, panic creates uncertainty, patience invites cooperation, frustration often multiplies itself. Whether you realize it or not, your emotions communicate before your words ever do. That is why emotional discipline is not only a personal advantage, it is a form of silent leadership. Think about a lighthouse standing on a rugged coastline. Ships do not follow it because it chases them across the sea. They trust it because it remains steady regardless of the weather. During calm nights, its light is reliable. During violent storms, that same light becomes even more valuable. Its strength comes from consistency, not intensity. People are drawn to the same quality. They naturally place greater trust in someone whose judgment remains stable when circumstances become unpredictable. A person who stays thoughtful during disagreement, composed during uncertainty, and respectful during conflict becomes a source of confidence for everyone nearby. This influence is earned, not demanded. Imagine two managers facing the same unexpected crisis. The first raises their voice, blames everyone around them, and makes rushed decisions simply to appear decisive. The second pauses, gathers information, listens carefully, and speaks with calm confidence. Neither person can erase the problem, but one creates additional chaos while the other creates direction. Authority may give both individuals the power to make decisions, but emotional discipline determines whether those decisions inspire trust. Leadership also depends on listening, a skill often overlooked because it appears passive. In reality, listening requires remarkable emotional control. It asks you to resist interrupting, avoid preparing your next argument while someone else is speaking, and remain curious even when you disagree. Imagine a skilled jeweler examining a rare gemstone. The jeweler does not rush to polish it before understanding its shape. They rotate it carefully, studying every angle until its true potential becomes visible. Listening follows the same principle. Before offering advice or judgment, take time to understand the full picture. People rarely remember every solution you offered, but they often remember how deeply they felt understood. Another mark of emotional leadership is consistency between values and behavior. Anyone can speak about honesty, patience, or respect when life is easy. The real question is whether those values remain visible when emotions rise. Your actions become your most convincing message. Picture a clockmaker assembling an intricate timepiece. Every gear must move in harmony with the others. If even one component ignores its purpose, the entire mechanism loses accuracy. Character works in much the same way. Integrity, humility, patience, courage, and self-control are not isolated qualities. They support one another. When one weakens, the others become harder to sustain. As you strengthen emotional discipline, you stop trying to control people through pressure or persuasion. Instead, you influence them through reliability. Others begin noticing that you do not rush into conflict, exaggerate problems, or react impulsively. They recognize that your decisions come from careful thought rather than emotional swings. Without asking for attention, you become someone others naturally seek during uncertain times. Perhaps the greatest lesson of leadership is this: people rarely copy what you say. They copy what you consistently demonstrate. If your reactions are thoughtful, they learn patience. If your words remain respectful under pressure, they discover composure. If you admit mistakes without defensiveness, they learn accountability. Your example quietly teaches long after conversations have ended. An unbreakable mind does more than protect its owner. It becomes a steady presence that strengthens everyone it touches. Leadership is not about standing above others. It is about standing firm within yourself so completely that your calmness becomes a source of direction in moments when others cannot yet find their own. And that kind of leadership begins with mastering the one person you will always be responsible for, yourself. Chapter 13. Turn every setback into an advantage. Every meaningful journey eventually reaches a point where progress seems to stop. Plans collapse without warning. Effort produces disappointing results. Doors you expected to open remain firmly closed. In those moments, it is easy to believe that the setback is the end of the story. Yet what appears to be a barrier is often a turning point that has not revealed its purpose yet. The difference lies in how you respond. Most people treat setbacks as verdicts. They assume failure is evidence that they are not capable, not talented enough, or simply not meant to succeed. But a setback is not a judgment about your future. It is feedback about your current approach. Confusing the two can keep you trapped in unnecessary discouragement. Imagine a mapmaker exploring an unfamiliar island. The first route leads into a steep canyon with no exit. The second path disappears into dense forest. A third ends at a cliff overlooking the sea. None of these discoveries represent failure. Each one removes uncertainty and brings the map closer to completion. The explorer does not become frustrated because another road proved unusable. Instead, every wrong turn reveals where the next right turn might begin. Life operates in much the same way. One reason setbacks feel so painful is that they interrupt the story we expected to live. We imagine a smooth path where effort is immediately rewarded and every decision moves us closer to success. When reality unfolds differently, disappointment arrives not only because of what happened, but because of the future we imagined losing. Think of a glassblower creating a delicate work of art. During the process, tiny imperfections often appear within the molten glass. An inexperienced craftsperson might discard the piece immediately. A master studies the flaw, adjusts the technique, and allows the finished design to become even more distinctive because of it. The imperfection does not disappear. It becomes part of the final masterpiece. Your challenges deserve the same perspective. They are not interruptions to your growth. They are materials for it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" ask, "What ability is this experience demanding from me?" A financial setback may require greater discipline. A failed relationship may reveal the importance of clearer communication. A professional disappointment may expose skills that still need strengthening. Every obstacle quietly asks you to become someone more capable than you were before. Another mistake is comparing your difficult chapter to someone else's visible success. Imagine walking through an art gallery where every painting represents only the final version of an artist's work. You never see the discarded sketches, the failed experiments, or the countless revisions hidden behind the finished canvas. If you judge your unfinished work against someone else's completed masterpiece, discouragement becomes almost inevitable. Remember that growth is rarely dramatic while it is happening. A tree does not become taller because it stretches with greater effort in a single afternoon. It grows through countless small changes that are almost impossible to notice from one day to the next. Emotional resilience develops in exactly the same way. Every disappointment handled with patience, every mistake examined with honesty, and every challenge faced without surrender quietly strengthens you, even when the progress remains invisible. There is also tremendous value in recovering quickly. Emotional discipline does not promise that you will never feel discouraged. It teaches you not to stay discouraged longer than necessary. The faster you move from self-pity to self-reflection, the sooner you reclaim your ability to act. Recovery is not forgetting what happened. It is refusing to let one difficult experience define every decision that follows. Imagine a skilled sailor caught in an unexpected storm. Strong winds force the boat away from its original course. The sailor does not waste precious time staring at the waves with regret. Instead, the compass is checked, the sails are adjusted, and a new route is plotted. The destination may remain the same even if the journey changes. This is the mindset of emotionally disciplined people. They understand that circumstances can alter the route without destroying the purpose. Flexibility becomes one of their greatest strengths because they are committed to progress rather than perfection. As this perspective becomes part of your life, setbacks gradually lose their power to intimidate you. They become teachers instead of enemies, invitations instead of punishments, and opportunities instead of excuses. You stop asking life to remove every obstacle and begin asking yourself how each obstacle can make you wiser, stronger, and more capable. An unbreakable mind is not created by avoiding disappointment. It is created by refusing to waste it. Every setback contains a hidden investment in your future, but only if you are willing to uncover it. When you choose learning over blame, resilience over resignation, and action over regret, every challenge leaves you better prepared for the next one. And over time, the experiences that once seemed determined to stop you become the very reasons you are able to move farther than you ever imagined. Chapter 14. Forge an Unbreakable Mind. Every meaningful transformation reaches a moment when knowledge must become identity. Reading about emotional discipline is valuable. Understanding it is even better, but neither creates lasting change on its own. A calm mind is not built by collecting inspiring ideas. It is built by practicing them until they become the natural way you think, respond, and live. The goal has never been to win a single emotional battle. The goal is to become the kind of person whose character consistently wins those battles before they begin. Imagine a master builder constructing a fortress on the edge of a coastline. The walls are not raised in anticipation of calm weather. They are designed with future storms in mind. Every stone is placed carefully because the builder understands that strength is decided long before the first wave crashes against the shore. Your emotional life follows the same principle. The habits you build today become the protection you depend on tomorrow. Throughout this journey, you have uncovered the hidden triggers that quietly shaped your reactions. You learned to interrupt automatic emotional patterns before they gained momentum. You questioned the stories your mind created instead of accepting every thought as truth. You reshaped your inner dialogue, slowed your decisions, remained steady under pressure, released the burden of controlling everything, redirected emotional energy toward growth, freed yourself from dependence on other people's approval, protected your peace around difficult people, practiced emotional discipline through daily habits, strengthened your ability to lead yourself, and transformed setbacks into opportunities for resilience. These lessons are not separate techniques. They are connected pieces of the same foundation. Imagine an old cathedral supported by dozens of stone arches. Remove one arch, and the building may continue standing for a while. Remove several, and the entire structure begins to weaken. Emotional strength works in much the same way. Self-awareness supports patience. Patience strengthens wise decisions. Wise decisions reinforce confidence. Confidence makes it easier to remain calm. Every habit strengthens the next until your character becomes far stronger than any single skill alone. There will still be days when you react too quickly. You will occasionally speak before thinking, misjudge a situation, or allow frustration to cloud your judgment. Emotional discipline does not require perfection. It requires recovery. Every mistake becomes another opportunity to return to the principles you have practiced rather than another reason to abandon them. Picture a skilled mountain guide leading travelers across difficult terrain. Occasionally, someone slips on loose stones or chooses an inefficient path. The guide does not declare the journey a failure because of one mistake. The group regains its footing, learns from the experience, and continues climbing. Progress depends far more on returning to the path than on never leaving it. One of the greatest signs of an unbreakable mind is consistency. Not dramatic acts of self-control performed once in a while, but steady choices repeated every day. A single act of patience is admirable. A lifetime of patience transforms relationships. One thoughtful decision is helpful. Hundreds of thoughtful decisions reshape a life. Great character is rarely built through extraordinary moments. It grows through ordinary choices made with extraordinary consistency. As you move forward, remember that the world will continue changing. New challenges will appear. Unexpected disappointments will test your resolve. Success may tempt you toward complacency, just as failure may tempt you toward discouragement. Yet none of these experiences have the power to define you unless you surrender your response to them. Imagine carrying a finely crafted compass throughout your life. Storms may hide the stars. Thick fog may obscure the road ahead. Familiar landmarks may disappear completely. But as long as the compass remains steady, you never truly lose your direction. Emotional discipline is that compass. It does not promise an easy journey. It promises that your values, judgment, and purpose will continue guiding you even when circumstances become uncertain. This is the quiet strength that cannot be borrowed, purchased, or given by anyone else. It is earned through thousands of deliberate choices made when no one is watching. It is built every time you choose understanding over assumption, patience over impulse, responsibility over blame, and wisdom over emotional urgency. An unbreakable mind is not a mind that never feels fear, disappointment, anger, or doubt. It is a mind that refuses to let those emotions become its leader. It recognizes them, learns from them, and then places them in their proper role as advisors rather than commanders. As this audiobook comes to its final chapter, remember that your greatest achievement will never be controlling every situation you encounter. Your greatest achievement will be becoming someone who remains grounded regardless of the situation. When your responses are guided by intention instead of impulse, your peace no longer depends on perfect circumstances. It depends on the strength you have patiently built within yourself. And that strength, once forged through consistent emotional discipline, becomes something no challenge, no criticism, and no uncertainty can ever take away. Conclusion. You have now reached the end of this journey, but in many ways, the real journey begins here. The purpose of this audiobook was never to help you avoid emotions. Emotions are part of being human. They bring passion, compassion, determination, and connection. The challenge has never been feeling deeply. The challenge has always been choosing wisely. Every chapter has been a reminder that your greatest strength is not found in controlling the world around you, but in directing the world within you. Think back to the person who started this audiobook. Perhaps you reacted too quickly to criticism. Perhaps stress often made your decisions for you. Maybe you allowed other people's opinions to shape your confidence or carried emotional burdens that quietly influenced every part of your life. None of those habits defined who you were. They were simply patterns. And patterns, no matter how old they seem, can always be changed through awareness and consistent practice. Imagine an experienced shipbuilder launching a newly finished vessel into the sea. The ship was never built to remain safely tied to the dock. It was designed to face changing tides, powerful winds, and uncertain horizons. Your mind is no different. Emotional discipline is not something to admire in theory. It is something to use every single day, every conversation, every setback, every disappointment, and every unexpected opportunity becomes another chance to strengthen what you have built. From this day forward, measure your progress differently. Do not ask whether life has become easier. Ask whether you have become steadier. Do not judge yourself by how rarely you experience difficult emotions. Judge yourself by how quickly you recognize them, understand them, and guide them toward wise action. Real growth is often invisible while it is happening, but its results become impossible to ignore over time. There will still be moments when you lose patience, misjudge a situation, or respond emotionally before thinking clearly. Those moments are not signs that you have failed. They are reminders that emotional discipline is a lifelong practice, not a destination. Every new day offers another opportunity to pause, reflect, adjust, and continue moving forward with greater wisdom than the day before. Remember one final image. Imagine carrying a small flame through a long and unpredictable night. Strong winds may appear without warning. Rain may threaten to extinguish the light. The path ahead may disappear into darkness. Yet with steady hands and careful attention, the flame continues to burn. That flame represents your ability to choose your response. Circumstances will always try to shake it, but only you decide whether it continues to shine. An unbreakable mind is not built through perfect days or comfortable seasons. It is forged through countless moments when you choose patience instead of impulse, understanding instead of assumption, courage instead of fear, and purpose instead of emotional reaction. Those choices may seem small in the moment, but together they create a life marked by resilience, clarity, and inner peace. As you leave this audiobook, carry one truth with you above all others. Life will continue asking questions through its challenges, its uncertainties, and its victories. Your response will always be your answer. Choose that answer with intention, strengthen it through daily practice, and allow it to become the quiet force that shapes your character for years to come. That is how an ordinary mind becomes an unbreakable one.